They say the earth remembers every step of those who dare walk with conviction, and the seas remember every hand that tries to claim their depths. Today, the waters between Indonesia and Malaysia are not still. They tremble as if whispering secrets of a conflict that could ignite from the heat of a collapsed block. But in the midst of storms, it is not the chaos that defines us. It is the strength we choose to become. In the shadow of oil-rich waters lies more than resource. It is the lifeblood of nations, the pride of generations, the anchor of identity. These waters are not just geographical coordinates or ink on a maritime map. They are the very veins through which the histories, dreams, and futures of two proud peoples flow. Every ripple carries with it the whispers of fishermen who have cast their nets for centuries, the prayers of mothers waiting for their sons to return from the sea, and the silent dignity of elders who have seen tides of change rise and fall. When the deep blue hides beneath it a treasure that can shape the fate of entire economies, it becomes more than a natural wonder, it becomes a contested crown. And when greed and fear join hands, draped in the banner of national pride, they begin to speak a language older than diplomacy and sharper than any blade. It is in these moments of heightened tension that the truth becomes clear. Wars are rarely about what they claim on the surface. The oil beneath the seabed is not just a commodity, it is a symbol. To one side it represents security, a safeguard against economic uncertainty, and a promise of progress for future generations. To the other it is a birthright, a tangible link to their heritage and proof that their sovereignty is not negotiable. Neither side sees themselves as the aggressor, each believes they are the guardian of something sacred. But history shows us that when both see themselves as protectors, the march toward confrontation is often only a matter of time. For the people living on these shores, this is not an abstract political debate. The outcome will shape the rhythm of their lives, the opportunities available to their children, and the way they carry their national identity in their hearts. A collapsed block on an oil field may sound like a technical matter to the world, but here, it is a spark hovering over dry kindling. Every news headline, every patrol ship spotted in the distance, every tense meeting between leaders is a reminder that the peace they have known could fracture overnight. The stakes are not just about barrels and profits. They are about the dignity of a nation that refuses to be overlooked, and the determination of a people who have weathered both storms of nature and storms of human ambition. There is a weight in defending what is yours, a gravity that pulls at the soul, reminding you that if you do not stand for it, no one else will. But there is also a danger in letting that weight drag you into the depths of reckless action, where pride blinds and fury fuels destruction. A true nation must remember that its most valuable resources are not locked beneath the seabed but live and breathe in its people. The oil may run dry one day, but the honor of how a nation chose to defend itself or chose to rise above its instincts will endure far longer. These waters will remain, long after the last drop is drawn, and the stories told by future generations will either be of a war that left scars across the heart of the region, or of a moment when two nations proved that wisdom could be stronger than weaponry. And in that choice lies the measure of their greatness, far beyond the reach of any oil-rich horizon. True power is not the size of a fleet, or the length of a pipeline. It is the courage to stand unshaken when waves slam against your shores. Armies can be counted, ships can be built, and reserves can be measured down to the last drop. But these are only tools. The true engine of a nation's strength is the will of its people, and the clarity of its purpose. When a country defines its power only through weapons and wealth, it builds on sand, but when it roots its strength in integrity, in the resilience of its citizens, it stands on rock, unshaken by storm. The waves of global politics crash constantly, shifting alliances and stirring up conflict, yet the nations that endure are the ones that do not let these tides dictate their moral compass. In the tense waters between Indonesia and Malaysia, leaders may speak in terms of strategy and logistics, weighing the advantage of each move as though the world were a chessboard. They calculate the number of patrol vessels, the reach of radar systems, and the profitability of oil extraction. But far too often, they forget the most vital equation, the human cost. The cost is written not only in the lives lost in battle, but in the ripple effect that touches every home, every community, every child's future. For every ship sent to guard a disputed block, there is a farmer tending his crops in uncertainty, a fisherman wondering if tomorrow the sea will be a place of livelihood or a zone of danger. The courage to remain unshaken in such moments is not about avoiding action. It is about choosing the action that reflects a nation's highest values, rather than its deepest fears. There is bravery in defending your land, but there is a rarer and greater bravery in refusing to let your pride be baited into destruction. The strongest leaders are those who see the battlefield, yet still search for the table where peace can be negotiated. They understand that true victory is not measured in territory gained, but in the lives preserved, the dreams left unbroken, and the dignity that remains intact when the dust settles. This kind of courage does not come easily. It demands that a leader stand firm under pressure from both outside forces and within their own people. It requires resisting the loudest voices calling for retaliation, and instead listening to the quieter wisdom that asks, "What will this cost us tomorrow?" It means carrying the weight of criticism for the sake of a future that others cannot yet see. And it is in these rare moments of restraint that a nation shows its real might, not in the roar of its engines but in the calm that precedes a decision born of wisdom. For the people themselves, this courage takes another form. It means standing together, refusing to let fear turn neighbor against neighbor, resisting the temptation to see those on the other side only as enemies rather than fellow human beings, shaped by their own struggles and hopes. It means holding on to identity without letting it harden into hatred, because when ordinary people choose peace in their hearts, they create a foundation that even the fiercest winds of politics cannot sweep away. In the end, the courage to stand unshaken is the kind of power that writes history, not in the ink of conquest, but in the lasting legacy of nations that chose to protect both their sovereignty and their humanity. It is the quiet strength that outlives the loudest wars, the kind that turns disputes into lessons and challenges into chapters of resilience. And it is this power that remains long after fleets rust, pipelines run dry, and the noise of conflict fades into the silence of memory. In the heat of dispute, the oil that fuels engines can also ignite hearts with fury. The same substance that powers progress can, in moments of mistrust and provocation, become the spark that lights 1,000 tempers. For nations, it is not only about the barrels extracted from beneath the seabed, it is about the symbolism of control, the declaration that this is ours and it will not be taken. When such emotions are stirred, the air between opposing sides grows thick, heavy with suspicion, and every action is weighed not for its practical value, but for the message it sends. Yet in the midst of this dangerous heat there exists a fire far more transformative than the one born of anger. It is the fire of unity, a vision of an unbreakable will to shape destiny beyond the reach of conflict. The true danger in disputes over resources is that they can shrink a nation's vision to immediate gain. Leaders may be tempted to see only the next negotiation, the next show of force, the next political advantage. But a nation fueled by unity does not burn itself out in the short-term heat of confrontation. It harnesses that energy for long-term strength. Unity takes the volatile spark of resource-driven rivalry and turns it into the steady flame that lights the path forward. It transforms a population from scattered voices into a single chorus, demanding not only the protection of its resources, but also the protection of its values and future. This unity is not built on blind agreement. It is forged through shared purpose. When a people understand that their greatest wealth lies not in what lies beneath the sea, but in what binds them together, they are less likely to be torn apart by fear or manipulated by those who would profit from chaos. Unity speaks in the language of resolve, telling the world, "We will defend what is ours, but we will not destroy ourselves in the process." It is an understanding that the nation's worth is measured not solely in what it possesses, but in how it chooses to defend and sustain those possessions. The fire of unity burns differently from the fire of anger. Anger consumes quickly. It roars, it blinds, it scorches indiscriminately. Unity, on the other hand, radiates with a steady intensity that can endure storms, political maneuvering, and even the temptation of revenge. It fuels not only military preparedness, but also innovation, diplomacy, and resilience. In the face of economic challenges, a united people cannot be easily broken, because their bond is not rooted in circumstance, but in shared commitment. When a nation refuses to bow to chaos, it becomes a force far greater than the sum of its parts. This strength is not always visible to those who seek dominance through intimidation. To them, power is in numbers and weapons. But history remembers those who wielded unity like a shield and vision like a compass. Such nations may be challenged, but they are never truly conquered, for their foundation lies in the collective spirit of their people. In disputes like the ones simmering between Indonesia and Malaysia, unity can mean the difference between a fleeting victory and lasting security. It ensures that even if leaders change, governments shift and strategies evolve, the core of the nation remains unshaken. The oil beneath the seabed may indeed be valuable, but it is only a fragment of the wealth a people can possess. The fire of unity burns longer, brighter, and with a heat that does not destroy but forges, turning moments of danger into milestones of strength, and transforming potential conflicts into the proving grounds of national character. Borders drawn on maps may spark disputes, but the true border is the one drawn in the soul. The line between despair and determination. On paper, lines are crisp and exact, marked by coordinates and treaties. They are ink on a document, a series of legal definitions that can be traced and measured. But for the people who live within those lines, borders are far more than geopolitical divisions. They are stories, memories, and sacrifices passed from one generation to the next. A border in the soul is not simply about geography. It is about the quiet resolve that no matter the hardships faced, the identity it protects will not be surrendered. When tensions rise over resources or territory, it is easy for a nation to feel the shadow of despair creeping in. The uncertainty of what tomorrow will bring can weaken resolve. Questions linger in the minds of those watching events unfold. Will conflict erupt? Will livelihoods be disrupted? Will the peace we have known become just a memory? Despair thrives in such moments, feeding on fear, amplifying doubts, and convincing people that the future is beyond their control. It is a slow erosion of spirit, dangerous because it does not announce itself with explosions or headlines. It seeps quietly into the hearts of a people. Yet opposite despair stands determination, and it is here that the truest form of defense is found. Determination is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in spite of it. It is the inner fortitude that keeps a nation from breaking under the weight of uncertainty. For Indonesia and Malaysia, whose histories are intertwined through trade, culture, and shared struggles, determination is the refusal to let a dispute over an oil-rich block erase centuries of shared existence. It is the recognition that even if the seas divide their shores, resilience and purpose can bridge the gap. Determination draws from a deeper well than momentary outrage. Outrage flares quickly, but determination is sustained over months, years, even generations. It is the willingness to endure short-term sacrifices to secure long-term stability. It compels a nation to prepare not simply for conflict, but for survival in all its forms, economic, cultural, and moral. Determination is found in the farmers who continue to sow their fields despite the uncertainty, in the teachers who continue to inspire young minds when the world outside the classroom feels unstable, and in the leaders who face criticism for choosing patience over aggression. The border in the soul protects more than physical territory. It safeguards the values that define a people. When that border is strong, no outside pressure can truly conquer a nation. Enemies may claim land, disrupt trade, or shift political alliances, but they cannot erase a spirit that refuses to bow. This is why some of history's smallest nations have stood against greater powers and endured, because their inner border was unbreakable. In disputes like the one at hand, the temptation to let despair win can be strong. The noise of politics, the provocations of those who seek advantage, the constant reminders of vulnerability, all of these can chip away at hope. But when a nation chooses determination, it asserts control over its narrative. It says, we may not choose the storms that come our way, but we will choose how we face them. And that choice becomes a shield no weapon can pierce, a wall no negotiation can breach, and a light that guides a people through even the darkest uncertainty. When the tides of war threaten to rise, Remember, the same waters that separate us can also unite us. Seas have long been seen as barriers, vast stretches of uncertainty between lands and cultures. But they are equally pathways linking histories, trade, and human connection. The water between Indonesia and Malaysia has carried fishermen's boats, merchants' cargo, and the silent prayers of sailors returning home. Long before these waters became contested for their oil-rich depths, they were arteries of life feeding the economies, cultures, and relationships that made both nations stronger. It is easy to forget this truth when the waves are stirred by political tension. Yet it remains beneath the surface conflict lies the deeper current of shared humanity. The oil beneath the seabed may belong to one, may be claimed by both, but the sea and sky have never bowed to the ownership of a single nation. They belong to all who live under them, to all who breathe the air and draw their sustenance from the water. To defend what is yours is an act of sovereignty. To defend it with wisdom is an act of greatness. Wisdom asks not only how can we win, but also what will it cost us if we do. A resource gained through reckless conflict can become a burden, heavy with the price paid in lives, in trust, and in the stability of the region. History has shown countless times that a victory achieved by force often sows the seeds of future strife. Today's conquest can become tomorrow's grievance, passed down like a wound from one generation to the next. That is why the measure of a nation's strength is not found in how swiftly it can claim what it wants, but in how skillfully it can protect its interests without destroying the bridges to its neighbors. When two nations are bound by both proximity and shared history, the choice to escalate a conflict is not just a matter of immediate gain, it is a decision that shapes the landscape for decades, perhaps even centuries. To defend with wisdom is to recognize that peace is not weakness, and restraint is not surrender. It is to understand that true security does not come from isolating oneself from others, but from building a network of respect, cooperation, and mutual benefit. Even in disputes there are opportunities to negotiate shared use of resources, to create agreements that strengthen rather than weaken both parties, to transform a potential battlefield into a shared field of progress. These paths are harder to walk than the quick march toward confrontation, but they yield fruits that last longer than any short-term victory. The same waters that carry warships can also carry aid vessels, scientific research ships, and trade routes that enrich both nations. The same skies that can be clouded by smoke can also be open pathways for communication and collaboration. This is the dual nature of our world. The elements themselves are neutral, waiting for us to decide whether we will use them to connect or to divide. A victory that costs your humanity is no victory at all. If in the pursuit of resources, a nation loses its capacity for compassion, its respect for life, and its sense of shared destiny with others, then what it has gained is hollow. But if it can stand firm, defend its rights, and still extend a hand where possible, then it will emerge, not only with resources intact, but with honor unbroken. An honor once kept becomes the most enduring treasure, one that cannot be drilled from the earth or stolen by force, but must be earned and preserved through choices that reflect the highest ideals of a people.